All right. I'd like to open this meeting at 6:30. Charlene, can we do the call to order?
Right. The roll call
Roll call?
is Bob Zukas,
Yes.
Doug Thompson,
Yes.
Brian Stack,
Yes.
Christina Cruz,
Yes.
Peter Bracci,
Here.
Bob Hamilton,
Here.
Richard Anthony. Did I hear from him?
No.
No, we did not.
Katie Knudsen. Here. Phil Spitaleri,
Here.
Rick Talon,
Here.
Carol Burton.
Here.
That's everybody but Richard Anthony.
All right, let us do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Oh, here we are. All right, so as we get the meeting together, there's not enough mics to go around, so I ask that everybody, if you don't have a mic in front of you, share it with somebody. That way, we do need it, we do need you speaking into the mic for this to go through, so just share between everyone. So we'd like to review the minutes. I know Richard just showed up, but has anybody had a chance, everybody had a chance to look at the meeting minutes from May 25th?
Make a motion that we accept the May 25th, 2021 Budget Committee minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Let's go on to, let's see, next down. All right, so there's nobody here from the public tonight. Doesn't look like we have any public comment for this evening, so we can move right along to filling the CIP alternative member vacancy. Now, I thought somebody had already volunteered for that. No? Yes. So that one's filled, so we won't have to fill it, because,
Well, I thought we still had
An alternate.
are there two?
So alternate and a regular voting.
an alternate, and it's the alternate that we don't have.
Yeah, at the last meeting, I was the full-time member. I believe Doug was the alternate.
No, I'm the other full-time member.
Oh, yeah, the full-time?
All right, so we got to find them all. So there's three members that we have two members and an alternate normally?
That's normal.
Okay. Would anybody like to be the alternate for the CIP in the event?
The alternate.
Okay, all right.
No objection.
Easy enough. Richard Anthony, thank you for volunteering for that. All right, we have I'm going to set the meeting schedule again for our next meeting, where I think until we get up and running, we're looking at, I don't think we have to start till November. I don't think we're going to have one. I mean, that's up to you. We can do one every month. We can do one every week. I don't know. We're not into, depending on how we want to start. I'm thinking, I mean, anybody have any ideas? I mean, do you want to meet every week or every Tuesday now through to get through the, yes, Bob?
I think it's a good idea to meet every week. That way, we can be wrapped up by the 1st of December.
Okay,
And that was the whole idea of getting started early.
okay. Then I'm all in favor of that. Is everybody else good with
It works
every
for me.
Tuesday? All right.
May I just throw in another? I spoke with the fire chief, Chief Knudsen, and he is ready to present his budget to us. We have the budgets. He can discuss his budget to us, and he's willing to do it as early as next week.
Okay. Well, let's get our schedule down. So if we're starting, if we're going to do it every Tuesday, that would make our next meeting is going to be October
12th.
Right, the
Fifth.
5th.
Fifth.
Okay. So let's see, so 5/12. So the only thing we need to do is make sure that come Thanksgiving, we're going to end up, obviously, the week of Thanksgiving. If there's somebody that's going to be out, we do ask during the holidays that you just let us know so we can plan ahead. Or if you're running late, let us know too. That way, we won't hold things up. But as it looks, we're just wide open right up until, right through. So let's plan for every Tuesday at 6:30. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Traditionally, in the past, when we were able to start in October, we normally took that Thanksgiving week off.
Okay,
So, because as long as we're well enough along, we felt comfortable being able to do that. Just wanted to throw that in.
okay. So we will not have a meeting on the 23rd. And then on the 21st, we will not have a meeting. Now, that also leads into New Year's being on Saturday. How are we feeling about the following Tuesday? Because now we're getting close to deliberative session time. So that would mean that we could still meet on the 4th, but because we're going to, at that point, we're close to, we're going to be at crunch time, wrapping up everything, yes.
I say we just see how we're doing December and then make
So
that
we can
decision
Play that by
then.
ear. All right, so let's do every Tuesday until, taking the one off the week of Thanksgiving, the one of Christmas, and then at that point, we'll assess where we're at. Hopefully, we've made good progress, and we should be in good shape at that point. All right? All right. We're going to review and discuss the 2021 budget and the budgeting process. We should have the process and everything, the proposed budget, the process is in our binders. As if you guys want to go through, I mean, I can read it out loud. We can, you can read it on your own. I would hope by now that everybody had a chance to go through what it was, what's expected of us, what a default budget, everything else that explains how the proposed budget and how we do this to, what the budget committee is deemed to do. So I don't know if there's anything people would like to cover or feel that we need to cover in the review and discussion of the budget, but we do have last year's budget available in our binders if you want to compare where we were last year to this year. But that is also on our sheets, so we should have, we shouldn't need to be flipping back and forth anyway, because we're going to have it on our sheets. So tonight's meeting, we can go over, we can look at the library's budget, because that was one of the things you guys already had seen, or how many of you went on the tour? Okay. Now, I understand that the library, I understand both the tours were very informational, and, you guys gained a lot of insight into how their budget was put together and what goes into their budget. We can go over the library budget, but there is nothing we can really change on their budget, because all we're doing is approving their budget. We can go over and see what their expenses are. We can't change it. It's set by the trustees, and they're governed under different rules that allows them to basically set their own budget and basically get funded. So the only alternative would be if we found something glaring at us that we felt should be cut, we can, as a committee, my understanding is not recommend their budget to the voters, and they can turn it down, but as it stands now, there really is nothing we can change on that, yes.
Do we know what budgets, if any, the selectmen approved on Monday?
Say it again?
Did the selectmen approve any budgets on
Yes,
Monday?
we approved 20 of the 33.
Okay.
So tonight, we can, I mean, if you guys went to the library, if you want to start with the library, we're more than happy to start there, and, I mean, that's going to be one of them. What was some of the, what ones,
Did we complete?
yeah,
Okay, so election, finance, assessing, tax collector, legal, human resources slash, I'm sorry, we did not do human resources, planning, zoning, cemeteries, insurance, advertising and regional associations, conflict of interest, street lighting, solid waste collection, solid waste disposal, health, human services, welfare, patriotic purposes and cultural, and debt service.
all right.
We did not get a copy of the library budget. Did you get one?
No, they were going to get us a copy.
Okay.
Yes.
We have Daryl and Greg here tonight. I was wondering if they're meeting next week and doing budgets, or when they would be wrapped up.
Yes, we're doing budget next week.
Projected next week or the week after?
Well, I don't think we'll be wrapped up, will we? Greg would probably be,
Okay,
We're expecting either 2 or 3. We made a lot of progress the
Yeah.
first one, but there's a lot of them were fairly easy to do.
okay,
We
good.
still have the real large budgets to discuss.
and I think, what do we have? We have police and fire coming
Fire
in
and
next
highway.
week. Those are the big ones that we'll
Right.
spend some time with, so. But Greg's right. I mean, we made a lot of progress on the ones that are what I call motherhood and apple pie type.
Yeah. Well, tonight, we can take some of the smaller, knock out some of the smaller, easier ones, if you'd like. Is there anybody have something in mind that they want to start with, or? Yes,
I do. I'd just like to discuss a couple of other things prior to getting into the budgets, the kind of things that I think we need to be aware of,
okay.
such as the census.
The what?
The census.
Okay,
Population has grown the last 10 years.
yep,
However, when you consider that in 2010, we had a decline in population, it has made up that, and we've now got a plus of something like 67 residents more than we had in 2000, which is not a tremendous amount. I guess my point is that our town has not been growing up until the last few years in population, but now we seem to be on a trend to see some increases, because if we look back at the last 20 years, we've had a 1.5% increase in population, one of the lowest in the state. And I think we should all be aware of that. From a budgetary point of view, I think we should be aware of that.
of the fact that we're not getting,
We are not growing in population up until recently.
I understand, but our commercial base is also growing, has grown leaps and bounds. Since then, we've added a lot of commercial base, we've upgraded the
Correct.
commercial base income and brought them closer in line to where they should be, and that they were not assessed in the past.
Unfortunately, we've gone from 30% residential taxation to 25% commercial taxation, which means that an extra 5% has gone onto the backs of the residents. So
Correct.
there is a separate issue there, but it isn't one for us to be here discussing tonight.
Right. But unfortunately, as we go through the budget, you'll see that one of the sheets that we have shows what the budget has been and the increase over the years. And we're looking at not even from, say, 2011, or let's go to 2010, and 2022's budget, we're not even at 3% increased in taxation. And this is also including, you got a new safety complex, we've got a new highway garage. We have a lot of major buildings and stuff in the infrastructure of this town. So that alone should increase the bottom line. And the fact that we were able to stay under 3% increase over that period of time. If you took from 2010 to 2022, if I take the cost of $7,328,000 and I multiply that by 3%, we should be looking at almost $11 million in our budget. Our budget should be pretty close to $11 million. But we're at 10.4. So we haven't even grown over all those years where the population's gone up and down minor. If you really were looking at the population, it hasn't, it hasn't been a large increase. I mean, in 2010, we had a population of 7,609. In 2020, we have 7,830. So you do the math. I mean,
Yeah, that's a decrease of 154 people, a decrease.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, if people leave, it's not going, there's no way, the tax base is the tax base. If you have people come or go, we're not going to be able to say, okay, well, 63 people left. Now we're just going to cut everybody's tax, nobody's taxes are going to go up. We still have to make the budget no matter where it is. The budget that is set forth
Right.
is the bottom line. They're not going to, we can't lower, if 63 people left, doesn't mean we're now going to get rid of one police officer, maybe a fireman. The highway department doesn't have to work as much. It's going to fluctuate up and down all the time. So to use the population as a guide, and only as a guide, the growth rate and how much our budget has gone up is one of the lowest around. You look at anybody's budget, under 3%, that's not even the cost of living increase over all those years. So we've done very well at keeping the taxes down by staying under 3%. And I think that's a credit to all the departments and everybody that's worked to keep this budget down. So I'd really like to focus on what the budgets are, where I mean, obviously the committee feels that if any cuts are available or that we feel line items are not in line, and go from there, because to start talking about population and things like that, we're not even taking into consideration the growth of what has been voted in and what we've gained in all those years for an infrastructure, be it commercial, be it even what the town owns and has built. I mean, we've gone leaps and bounds over where we were in safety aspects and in buildings, So was you're interested in the population? To what end are you saying that that we should be considering this? What is it that you're trying to?
All I'm saying is that most of our surrounding towns, and most towns in New Hampshire, grow at a rate of about 5% a year. We're not doing that. We're not even close to that. That extra 5% pretty much stabilizes taxes because that brings in 5% more revenue.
Right.
We haven't seen that. We haven't seen it since 2000,
Right.
the last 20 years.
But wait,
So that is a reason why our taxes have grown so strongly in recent years.
Right.
Because we don't have the growth bringing in the extra $7,000 or $8,000 from those homes or those residents
Right.
to offset the budget increases.
Christina had a question.
Yeah, I just have a question in regards to the census. The census is for the entire population, correct? So it's children, adults, everybody. So I just think that that's a very blanket statement, only because if we all don't have more children, then the population doesn't go up. It doesn't mean that the taxpayers aren't paying their taxes. Thank you.
I don't think anybody's saying that.
But that's what it sounds like, because population would be mothers, fathers, children. If you only have one child per household, you have one household paying into the taxes, correct? But the population isn't rising because there's only one child. Whereas if it's 5 children, then the population is rising. So I just think that it's not easy to be cut and dry, and I think that that's kind of getting a little bit away from what we should be doing.
Yes.
So just two quick comments. One is, if a town grows by 5%, that doesn't mean they bring 5% more revenue. They still have a town budget, and it's divided among all of those people. Likely, the taxes will actually go down because it's being divided by a larger number. And the second point is that Plaistow, believe it or not, is a fairly small town. We're actually running out of development land. There's not a lot of development happening. And there are other towns like Hampstead and Kingston that do have a lot of land and can have a lot of more development than we do. So, and I kind of agree with Christine, there's no relationship to the cost. It's basically the number of parcels that we have in the town, both commercial and residents, that determines how we divide that into the budget to come up with what the taxes are going to be. And if we have a family with a mother and father and no children, or if we have a mother and father and 6 children, it doesn't matter, that they still pay that same amount of taxes. It's per parcel, not by population.
Exactly.
Peter?
I'd like to chime in on this, and it's something that I argue with other people about all the time. And when I think of the Budget Committee, I think of what money is coming out of my pocket. And although we have control, or we have a real input to the budget, we also have warrant articles. And warrant articles, we make a determination of whether we like them or not at the end of the year, and it's not part of the budget, but it still is part of the money that comes out of my pocket. And I think if you say that the budget is level, have we taken a look at how much we have spent on warrant articles, which are approved by the people, the
Right.
citizens, not us?
Right.
But if that number keeps going up, it's in my mind, it increases the budget a lot more than we're talking about.
But unfortunately, as a board or as a town, we have no control over that. As
I realize that.
municipality, we don't have control over that.
True.
You have, like you said, you have voters that vote for a new safety complex. We also have bonds that have come due. And so as people come and go, we still have to, people may move into town but then leave. We still have that bond on the safety complex. We still have every debt that was incurred when those people came. And unfortunately, whether everybody's upset about the valuation of their home, it's going to go up and down. Unfortunately, the taxes are the taxes, okay? If we make X amount of dollars on an evaluation and your taxes go upward, the bottom line is we still have to meet the same bottom line at the end of the budget. And yes,
I think we all know we're a very small portion and a small cog in this whole thing. The real crux of any budget problem for any town is the school. And all we can do is be as prudent as we can be within town, but our budget is very, very small compared to what is actually raised, because the school is getting the bulk of what we raise.
absolutely.
And until we feel as though, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but the onus has to be put on the school probably more than any other place. And, you can have a household with one child in it, and they pay, let's say, $8,000 in taxes. But if they've got 6 children in there, there's 6 kids that are going to the school, and each one of those children are worth something more than the $6,000 or $8,000 they're paying in taxes. So I think the real crux here is taking care of business as best we can with what I consider a small budget compared to the school budget. We have to take and be on our school reps to take and be on their best behavior.
And unfortunately, we've had COVID, we have everything going on. The bottom line is going to be, there's going to be an increase across the board. Right now, the cost of living has, we're looking at 4%, under 3 on our rate here. But if you do the bottom line, products and is it fuel, is it whatever, that's all gone up. That's gone up more than 4%. In some cases, I deal with propane, it's gone up 12%. So for the utilities and the stuff that they're budgeting in here, it did go up. Some of those line items did go, it had to, because across the board, there's an increase in all your products and your services and things that we have, and unfortunately, we have no control of that. So all we can do as a committee is try to look at these line items and try to be as fiscally responsible as we can be with what these people are asking for, and see how far out of line we are with what it's been in the past, and also, do we feel that the increases are warranted, that they're asking for? Because almost every department is going to show that they're going to need an increase, other than, well, the fire, let's use the fire department, they're level funded. So,
Police.
so again, they're not asking for another $1 million. They're not asking for, so we're also looking at that on some of these departments that we have in here, because they're not asking for an increase in a lot of these. Some of these are level funded across the board, because even with the cost of living, with all the supplies and materials going up in price, they've not asked for that. They've found a way around to keep that down. So our job is to see if everybody's trying to do the same thing, trying to keep things in line. We all want to see our taxes stay low, but like Peter said, it's the warrant articles too. I mean, we've found as a town, I think that when a big dollar item comes in, we want it to go before the voters instead of putting it in the budget, instead of asking, and giving the voters the option to say, yes, I will spend that money, or no, I won't. And customarily, they've been saying, yeah, let's get it, we need this, but at what cost? So when everybody looks at us and we sit down and we say, okay, one of the things is we have a surplus. Okay, so we need to look into how did we get the surplus? Why is there a surplus? And go into that. But we can, as a board, do again what happened in the past, where we say, okay, we have a $639,000 surplus. I want you to cut the budget by $400,000 this year, and not give a direction on where it's coming from. We as a board are not doing our job or being responsible by saying to the selectmen and everyone else, okay, you got a excess of 400,000. Let's cut it. We are 600,000. We want you to cut your budget, but not tell them where we think the extra is, because after I've read over this, I'm not seeing a whole lot of extra in here. So as we go through this, we need to keep in mind that that just because it's a surplus, that doesn't mean that we should start axing everything, because we did that last year and we ran into issues big time. We have trucks at the highway department that aren't being fixed. We have a lot of big bills that are coming in now, and we did that last year by telling them, okay, here's the money. You got this much money, cut it. Cut that much out of your budget. But we did, as a committee, tell them where we wanted it to come from. And I think this year, that's going forward, that needs to change. If we're gonna be responsible enough, if we're gonna take the initiative to say the budget should be cut by 400,000, then as a committee, we should be saying, and this is where I think you should be starting or looking, and that should be the route that we go as a committee. Yes, sir.
Bob, I hear what you're saying, that, and you were saying that, like, the highway department didn't have the money to spend it. How come we ended up with a $600,000 surplus?
There were several reasons. One of the big reasons is we had a lot of grants and funds come in for COVID and stuff that was brought in that was already budgeted for. We were reimbursed for a lot of line items that we initially did not know were going to be there. But some of the line items, that money is, it may show that we have a surplus, but there is still the amount, like the officers that need to be, the positions that needed to be filled. There's a lot of things in there that were unexpected. And if we were to go and say to them this year, okay, we want you to take that 600,000 and cut it out and use that up. And then when we run into an issue where something is needed, we have a major vehicle go down, we have something in this town that needs to be addressed,
Well, that's
we're in
not-
trouble.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if, how can our departments go without buying things if we have $600,000 surplus? If we have a $600,000 surplus, every department can get everything they want.
At the end of the year, people are going by we're going by our budget. When we find out what we have for surplus, we find it out at the end of the year. So to ask a department at the beginning of the year, even in the middle of the year, let's say we need a new copy machine for downstairs, and that's not budgeted, but we think there's going to be a surplus, and we go out and buy a new copy machine. Let's say there's not a surplus. Where's that money come from? What are we doing? Where are you getting that money? Okay? So you don't know about the costs until we get to the end of the year, when they do the audit, when they find out how much came in. Last year was a crazy year for COVID and for, we didn't know what donations we were getting. No, seriously, we didn't know what grants were going to be given to us, how many grants were coming in, funding and stuff for the cities and the towns.
Well,
That wasn't known.
Rob, that's why we have all these contingency funds, that we can take money from this pot and that pot and call it an emergency or whatever, and that's what the snow contingency fund, the emergency contingency fund, that's where the money can come from. So I don't see how departments can go without buying things.
Joe had something.
I can't speak for all of it, but things like the ARPA funds, the PPP funds, those are limited to what we can spend them on. We just can't say, oh, geez, we'll go buy a cruiser, or we'll go buy a truck, or you know, we need a copying machine. It has to meet within the confines of what those two loans tell you have to use, okay? And if you use it for labor for some reason, and it creates a balance in the account because you were able to use it for labor, it doesn't mean you can just take it out of that account and use it someplace else. So there's more to the story than I would even guess to know at this point. But there is more to that story, let's put it that way.
Somebody else had it. Yes, Bob.
I just want to comment about your comment about not knowing until the end of the year what our surplus will be. We get these expense reports every month, and this tells the story. And if you look at these expense reports over the years, it tells the story. I have August that was just sent out to us, August of 2021. If I look back at August of 2019, I see that last year, the August report showed almost $20,000 less in expenditures than the year before. Now, maybe that's because of COVID. However, this year, they're even less than that. So we're running year-to-date expenses less now than we were 2 years ago. So that's just another reason why we get these things, so that we can kind of figure out where we're at going into a budget year, knowing that we're not really out of, I mean, to hear everybody talk, we're squeezing pennies and we're not doing this and we're not doing that. These don't tell that story. These tell the story that we're financially in pretty good shape. And then when we get a budget presented to us that's almost 5%, it kind of sets me back because it doesn't jive with what these reports are telling us.
Almost 5% from what, last year? Or from
Well,
2010?
We got this budget that was presented to the Board of Selectmen is a 4.7% increase over this year.
Okay.
So if we're running year-to-date with lower expenditures than we were 2 years ago, why are we asking for 4.7%?
Christina.
I guess I would just ask too, we need to be clear on, when we're speaking of expenditures, are we speaking of things that we can change or things that we can't? So if we.
Budget
if we're-
expenditures.
Right, I understand that, but if we're talking about salaries, 2 CBAs went through last year, so that, we can't change that. If we're talking about electricity, well, that's something entirely different. And so I think that we just need to be clear that we're not blanket stating, that was what I was trying to get at, is that we have to be very precise on what we're talking about and what expenditure line we are looking at, because I know that when I think expenditures, I think of the whole kit and caboodle, but if you take the CBAs, we can't touch what the salaries are at the police department or the unions here at Town Hall. Those already went through. So whether they're higher or lower, that's not really for us to be able to decide or
But
discuss.
all I'm doing is interpreting the expenditure report.
Right, I would just ask, what line are you looking at, Bob? Like, I think that's what we should just be
The total
discussing.
summary, the total expenditures as of year-to-date, as of August 31st.
But that's not every department. You're picking one department.
No, I'm talking about total expenditures.
He's talking about the bottom line.
Oh, I see what you're saying, oh, okay.
Total budget expenditures is lower this year than it was 2 years ago.
Greg,
Just a couple of,
It
just a
makes
couple
no
of,
sense because
just a couple
she's
of
right.
comments. One, we have the actual expenditures for August, which basically is not the whole year. It's only a portion of the year. And the other thing, a lot of these line items are back-end loaded, which means the expenses come at the end of the year. So we will have a not a proportional increase in expenses in the coming months, because as we get towards the end of the year, a lot of these charges would be brought in. The second point I want to make is about the surplus. We have a surplus in case things go wrong, because a budget's kind of like a plan. It's a plan. And we don't want to have a budget that if one thing goes haywire, that we have to close the doors because we can't afford it. And that surplus is used as that cushion. And just one little example, I think somebody already made it. Look at the price of gasoline.
Yep.
We have a line item that has, a gas line, but that doesn't go as far because now the gas is $3.50 versus $2.20. That's an exorbitant increase. It's not, 2% or 3% or even 4.7%. It's way, way, way much higher. So we need to have that surplus because these things happen in a budget process. At the end of the year, that surplus does not go into Never Never Land, it goes back into the budget. So the surplus is actually a cushion that is defined by the DRA as making us a recommendation of how much of a cushion that we should have so that we can get through the budget when things don't go as perfectly planned as they might. So it's not like we're throwing $600,000 out the window every year. No, we're using that same dollars every year. If we don't use it, it just goes back in for the following year.
And it's not, and I know the word slush fund and everything else little, but it's not. It isn't, I mean, we do have rules and laws in place that doesn't allow it to become just a piggy bank for anybody to dip into. There are guidelines that must be followed.
Just a question.
Yes, Richard?
Yes. So where is this surplus that you're talking about, this line item you're saying that gets remitted every year? To what fund? Is that the unallocated fund or
Unassigned fund balance.
the unassigned fund? And what's the balance in
The
that?
unassigned fund balance at the beginning of the year is somewhere around 2.1 or $2.2 million. as defined
2.2 million?
for our $10 million budget. So that basically the DRA is saying, this is how much money you need to have, because we don't collect all of the revenue all at once. All the taxpayers get 2 bills a year. So when we get the first bill coming in, we still have to pay the bills. We still have to pay the school. We still have to pay all the expenses for all the departments. And that's what that unassigned fund balance does.
So
It's
the
kind of
unassigned
acting
fund
as
balance-
working capital, and then once the revenue comes in, we go right back to the
So that we
budget.
can pay our employees.
So in essence, you're saying the unassigned account balance is amongst other things, is a sum total of budget surpluses, accounts that have been, closed, and then those excess funds deposited in there.
All money goes into the quote-unquote general fund, and at the beginning of each budget process, the finance director, through the recommendations and advice of the DRA, sets up an amount for the unassigned fund balance. And that's the amount that we put aside. And at the end of the year, if none of that money has been spent, it just goes right back into, the general accounts for the next year. And so the next year, we say, all right, we need $2.2 million for working capital and for the surplus. And it's the same money that we're using over and over and over again. And it's what town budgets do. This is how town budgets work. And this is directed by the Department of Revenue Accounting in our state. This is what we are told to do.
Is there statutory guidance as to how large that account has to be in terms of what a sufficient amount based on?
It's not an
Size of the
RSA.
town,
It is a recommendation by the Department of Revenue Accounting.
What is that recommendation?
I would not want to assume what that percentage is. I think it's 17%, but I'm not sure that that's the right number. We could ask Greg Kobe, he could tell us what that percentage is. He's the person that actually does that work. He gets the communication from the DRA, and he determines what the
So
unassigned
theoretically,
fund balance should be.
so theoretically, what, if that balance was whatever the number's supposed to be, its value is X, anything in excess of X would be
Surplus.
surplus. Okay.
And also, you got to understand that $2.1 million is not just for the town, it's also for the school. So until the taxes come in, we have to pay the teachers, we have to pay the principals, we have to pay for the maintenance of the building, we have to, all these other expenses. They are taking money out of that unassigned fund balance until the revenue comes in twice a year.
Yeah, Peter?
Greg, I want to make sure that
Yep.
everybody knows this unassigned fund balance, there is a certain percent, a range that it's supposed to stay in every year.
Yep.
And the selectmen can choose to take part of that unassigned fund balance and lower our tax rate. They can do that, unless they use that unassigned fund balance to pay for warrant articles where you see no money to be raised by new taxation. That's coming out of the unassigned fund balance.
Correct.
That could be used to lower the tax rate. And I would
correct.
like to know how much our tax rate has been lowered by a portion of that surplus in the last 3 years. I think you've got to see zero. Our tax rate has not been lowered by the unassigned fund balance.
Correct.
Because we've been using it
Correct.
to pay for warrant articles.
Okay, but the warrant articles that we're asking for, whether you were to take 400,000 and give it and spread it out to the town, lower the tax rate, then you turn around with a warrant article and you ask for X amount of dollars that would increase your taxes by, monies to be raised by taxation. So it's the same way. Either way you're looking at it,
Well,
you're ask-
Bob, it's a different story. When you're signing your name to a warrant article, it says no money to be raised by new taxation, or $50,000 has got to come out of your pocket. There's a difference in how you say yes or no to a warrant article.
How the voter understands it, how the voter understands how it's gonna be applied.
Yeah.
So if voters see it come out of the unsigned fund balance, they're not necessarily feeling it's their money.
That's right.
It's already dedicated for a purpose, so it's easy to say yes. If we go out to eat and you're gonna pay, it's easy for me to say yes. But if I'm gonna pay, I may, get a hamburger instead of steak.
What you don't know is that he has your wallet.
That's right, yeah.
Would it be helpful if we were to ask Greg Kobe to come before the next meeting and have that discussion on unassigned fund balance once and for all, and
I think
answer
that
the
would,
questions that Peter has and Bob has and whoever else?
I think that would be a good way, yes.
Would that
Phil.
be,
Well, I think you're making a very good point, and I think he's coming from the taxpayer point of view. Because when I'm looking at a warrant article, I say, oh, it's not gonna cost any more taxes. People aren't thinking of it in terms of, well, that's a way, we can lower our tax rate by not paying for this. You know what I mean? Because they don't understand that. It's not, it's the way it's being presented to the people, I think, is a little bit, I'm not saying misleading intentionally or, trying to deceive people, but I think most voters aren't savvy enough to realize what he's trying to explain right now.
Yes, Bob.
I have two quick points. One is that we have not seen a reduction in our tax rate as a result of budget surplus or revenue surplus that the town has, unassigned funds. We haven't seen that in 4 years. Prior to that, every year, we used to see a reduction of $450,000 to $600,000 in the tax rate. That helped a lot. One point. Second point is, I think I lost it. Oh, warrant articles. Don't get the impression that all warrant articles pass, because they don't. The last 2 years, at least the last 2 years, there's been at least 5 warrant articles that were rejected by the voters. So that's an indication that people are being a little bit more cautious. What you have to realize is that we've had some healthy assessment increases, which is reflected on our tax bills in the last few years, and that has resulted in some less, an increase in number of warrant articles that have not passed.
So out of the numbers, do we know what numbers of those warrant articles, the ones that you're speaking of, did they say no taxation, no funds to be raised by taxation?
Those usually pass.
I'm sorry?
Those usually pass.
Okay, so I understand where Peter's coming from. That is definitely a valid point, and I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure if the process, how that would come about, how you could even take that surplus and apply it to these items. Like the warrant articles, we don't know what the warrant articles are until near the end of the year. So if there was something that was needed in this town, I think a lot of it runs the risk, you could say yes, the townspeople can say, no, I don't want new cruisers, or I don't want a new highway truck, which would be raised at zero taxation, because they're gonna use some of the surplus to get the equipment we need. You give them that option by lowering the tax rate, but unfortunately, to what end? Because now, let's say you don't get that, say we do vote that down, because people want to lower the bill. It's also, you run the same thing that happens now is, why is my street not plowed? Why am I not, a perfect example would be, have you noticed the lines in Plaistow? The painted lines on the new asphalt? We don't have fog lines in a lot of places. We just got crosswalks and stop lines, because we didn't have the money in the highway budget this year to paint, to have all that done on the road. Not only that, we also got rid of some of the maintenance that was the summer help that we had in the past. So the highway department's been doing all our landscaping. So again, you look at different things, and yeah, sure, we could put that out as a warrant article for a dollar amount, and somebody can say no, but the problem is when you talk safety, you talk about some of these things that are zero amount of funds being raised by taxation, you're still looking at a safety issue. So if the people choose not to go for that because it's saving money, okay, you've spoken, and I understand that, but again, it's same balance, I think, yes.
I've never seen safety warrant articles that reflect on safety be voted down, never. What gets defeated is things that, such as the,
CIP items often get,
well, I'm
often get
thinking
voted
about
down.
the fund that we have for doing LED lighting and stuff. I forget the name of that.
Energy.
Okay, that got voted down this past year. I mean, when we do these energy-efficient lighting and things, we're saving a ton of money. We have with streetlights, and we have at the library, we've had it at the town hall, the fire department. We're saving a ton of money in energy, and that's one that got turned down, which is unfortunate. It's not safety that gets turned down, it's things like that that oftentimes is designed to save us money. That's the sad part. But when people are looking at 20 warrant articles and they get down towards the end, those are usually the ones that people are sick and tired of spending money, signing checks, so to speak, when you're checking these off at the ballot, and those are the ones that get turned down.
I understand.
We've completed a lot of projects over the last 2 or 3 years. Talking to the town manager, we do not expect hardly any projects. So there will be a significant decrease in warrant articles. But I just had a conversation with Jill Center, and she does not understand why the taxpayers, we have these CIP trust funds where we put money aside so that we can make a major purchase. And those are the ones that they are voting against. So unless we actually put, partial unassigned fund balance and partially taxes, those will pass. But if you just say, I want $40,000 to put in the energy fund, or $40,000 to put in the cemetery fund, or $40,000 to put in some other fund, those often get rejected.
So there is a fine line. It's a tough balancing act. And if you're going by the concept that Greg just said, some of these items, if you're taking the unassigned balance, and I think that if you went for the taxpayers on the, let's say for the LED lighting, if some of that was funded by the unassigned balance and a portion by taxation, and it was a small amount, the chances of that passing would have been a lot greater. So when you have a warrant article that is, in the long run, saving the town money and funds, you have the flexibility with the unassigned balance to put that money towards those projects. And I think as a town, if we were, so when we see those line items that we say, no taxation raised, those should be the ones that have zero raised by taxes. Ones that in the long run are going to save us money as a town, not something that we're going to end up, that we could pass or not, and still it's not going to save us any money. It's in the long run, we're not gaining anything. I think that becomes down to whoever's handling what money's assigned to those warrant articles. So I think I think you're absolutely right when you say, if I was to put on a warrant article that I want to raise $100,000 through taxes to make this warrant article through, taxpayers may say, no way. But if I put it through as 75 of it is coming from unassigned balance, and only 25,000 is coming from, taxation, you now made an article that is going to save the town, let's say with the lighting, you've now saved them over the long run. It's going to pay for itself. So I think that's the balancing act that we need to set, to try to go with, more so than just saying, okay, we're going to give you back the surplus. Oh, by the way, though, we're going to also tax you for stuff that's going to save us money in the long run. So I think it comes down to not so much us as that, but it's also the selectmen, it's whoever's setting these warrant articles forward. That's where we should be trying to be fiscally responsible on what are the assigned balance is going towards, and not frivolous things that we could probably hold off on.
The solar panels for the salt shed were done exactly the way you just described. It's a good thing, but it's extra money, and it's an investment. And we have a life expectancy of these solar panels that will last 25 years at 99% of their efficiency, and then another 15 years, so it could go out to 40 years. We'll be getting power savings from Unitil for all the energy that we produce. And the payback is, the break-even point is like 8 years. So in 8 years, we paid for that entire investment, and then from the 8th year or 9th year to the year 40, we are bringing revenue into the town. We are reducing the cost of our electricity. And anything that we are doing that's energy specific, the Energy Committee can come to the selectmen and say, this is how we would like to approach this. If they come to us with a warrant, and it's a clean warrant, we put the warrant inside of the, show it to the taxpayers.
Right.
Okay? You're right. It's a balancing act, and a lot of the project work that we have done is now done. So we won't have a slew of warrant articles this coming year.
We have, I don't know if you've also seen on our, the expense reports and stuff, in December, when we do the audit, or when we get an audit at the end of the year, or we see what's left in the surplus after we've paid expenses, there is also, a lot of our stuff is net 30 in this town. So we're paying in December, we spend a lot in December, but if you'll notice January, we're not spending a lot of anything. January is a very small balance because we've now closed the books, we've now taken the funds that we would have done net 30 on, and we've paid them off. So now coming to January, you're almost starting at net 30 for February. So you really haven't made any expenses in January yet, because what you are spending in January is going to have to come due to be paid in February. So if you really looked at that also, we're saying at the end of the year, wow, look at how many expenses we have. Look at what we spend every December. Well, we're spending that in December because we're also pretty much covering everything in January that was spent in December. So that's also deceiving when you look at the numbers of what exactly we spend and what we, and what's coming in, what's going out. So it really is, it's tough to say. I mean, if we have an expense for December, if December's a bad year, let's say for whatever the budget happens to be, and we blow the budget out by the end of the year, and we run that into January, and we're paying off January too, all the stuff that we ran up in December, there's got to be some surplus. There's got to be something that will allow us to go into the new year and ask the taxpayers, let's recoup some of this, or let's fix this so this doesn't happen again. We have a contingency. And then we hope that the selectman or whoever's setting the budget, or the selectman who's approving the budget, or whoever selects doing the warrant articles can then say, okay, we're going to lower these warrant articles that are going to save the town money by putting funds towards that and asking the taxpayers to come up with the difference. So I think a lot of that starts with, at that level, more so than us as a board, saying, okay, you just cut it. You got this, now cut it. I think we need to have some, good ideas, some direction in which we do that. Does somebody else have a question?
I have a comment. I'd like to kind of refocus us here a little bit this evening, because I think what we need to do is determine what department heads we should be having coming in before us to present their budgets. At our other meeting, we talked about the bigger departments like highway and fire department, police department, so on. And the other thing is, traditionally, we would go into these budget meetings when we're going to review budgets, knowing ahead of time which budgets we're going to be reviewing.
Right.
So that takes a little bit of work to kind of set that up.
I'm hoping that tonight we can, before we leave, we'll have an idea in what order we want to go. And with Greg having the, knowing what's already been approved and gone through, that'll make tonight a little easier to set up some kind, and with the board, putting their input on what they'd like to address and how, if we do it properly, some of the big items could be addressed in an evening with several small ones.
Right.
Which will make this go a lot faster also.
Would you want to match the ones that we have already approved? Would that be,
Yeah,
be
if we,
productive?
yeah, that would be,
So we can start with elections, which is on page 3.
I just make one more
Yes.
point, because we have so many new members on the budget committee. Board of Selectmen is going through and approving budgets. We don't do that initially. We go and we take them under consideration. Then we vote later on in the budget process to approve, after we know that all the changes have been already made and so on. Is that clear?
Yep.
yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on elections?
Yeah. So one key thing that we have to look at this year is that we have 3 elections. So that's why some of these items are a little bit higher. And I think it's pretty well, it's actually shown 3 or 4 times, 3 times or 4 times. So that's a difference of,
What page?
it's page 3, Bob.
Yes.
Yep.
3.
Yep. So it's a difference of $9,375.
Yeah.
So we don't have a choice on that one.
No, we have to do the
As far
elections.
as what? Oh, the fact that there are 3 elections?
So there's a, there may be a tradition in terms of, we're going to consider the budget. You don't have to do that. You can, if you go through this and you look at it and say, yep, it's reasonable, you can approve that budget right off the bat. Once we have taken the whole budget, we are considering the budget. We are considering this whole thing. So you don't have to individually consider each individual one. You can vote on each individual department one at a time. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd make a motion that we would approve the election department budget of $21,470.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? If not, can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, passed.
I abstain.
What's that?
I
Oh, an
abstain.
abstention. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay,
So the next one is on the next page, which is finance. I'll make one point that on dues, the dues went up from $85 to $250, and that is because additional people, additional employees in the town were invited to join these two organizations. These are two financial organizations, New Hampshire GFOA and New England GFOA. So that's why that number went up.
Also, this year, we went up in the cost of our expenses due to the binders that we have and all of that. So we need to, so that went up. Also, we have Charlene this year, which we didn't. So you're going to see an increase on those two lines. And I think that's important to note that, yes, we went from under $100 up to $750 in BudCom expenses, but you're also going into this with a lot more knowledge, a lot more paperwork, a lot of enlightenment of what is going on in town, where we didn't have that in the past. So just want to make that clear.
So that's an increase of $2,759 from last year.
All right, do we have a motion to accept the finance?
I'll make a motion that we accept the Finance Department budget for $186,084.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems like, based on looking back on the history, we usually don't come close to what we budgeted. Is this taking into account any of these surpluses and emergency contingencies, that kind of thing?
I'm not sure I understand, Phil. what
Well,
this is.
we're looking at, say, the data processing. You got 2018 is about 4,600, 7,800 next year. And then all of a sudden, went from 2020 to 2021, we almost doubled it. I'm just wondering what was driving all of that, those kinds of differences.
So BSMI is our software that we use for payroll and all that, so it's probably just their costs that are added on to ours. We'd have to take a look at the contract. But
Okay.
BSMI is basically all of what they use for their finance tool.
So last year, I believe there was a major release, so we would get a normal rent charge for that, and then if we do go to a major version change, then it'll bump up.
But if you also notice, Phil, the treasurer's salary went down.
Yep.
So it's probably automation that happened that reduced salary.
Okay. All right, that's all I was asking, a general question.
Yeah, that's a good point, Doug.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. That's approved.
So the next one is the assessing budget on page 5. And what I can tell you is that though we don't have the actual assessing contract signed, it was estimated by the company that we are using, Cochran Associates. So these numbers do reflect what that contract is going to be.
Bob?
Yes.
Greg, could you explain to me
Yep.
and us?
Yep.
Who's doing the assessing now? Is it Cochran Associates, is it Visions, or do we have the software, or?
Okay, we have the software,
What's
then we
going
have,
on?
we have the Vision software, and Vision was hired to do a full 5-year assessment, did not deliver it on time,
And
and
what on time?
did not deliver it, they defaulted on their contract. So we did not pay their entire bill, and we basically have potted companies, but Cochran will actually do the actual values new.
Is there any intent in the future to change from Cochran to Visions or somebody else?
Well, we looked at the Vision software as a much better software than the one that we were using, and it's a much more compatible, so there are other assessor firms that we could consider.
All right.
That are familiar with Vision. The one that we're currently using was, I think it's called Universe. There was a very, very few assessing firms that actually knew how to use it. So having Visions, we have the ability, if we're not happy with Cochrane, we could go to another assessor. Does that answer your question, Peter?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any more questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of approving the assessing budget for $112,320?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
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 Opposed? And denied? I mean, abstained? You're abstaining? Okay.
Page 6 is the tax collector budget. And that represents a difference of $1,448 from last year. That is a 1.5% increase from last year's budget.
All right. Any questions? Yes.
You look at the tax collector salary, and the 21 budget is 32,000, the 22 budget is 32,000, and how can you go up with a cost of COLA in April, and it's still the same? It's got the same amount both years.
That's a good
We didn't spend 32,000 in 2021.
That's what was budgeted.
Yeah, it was budgeted, but we didn't end up spending it.
But the year's not over yet.
But that's a salaried position.
Yeah, but I think there was a change in the middle of the year. There was, the tax collector quit, the one that was elected to do it, decided that she didn't want to do it. So we hired somebody else. I think the tax collector was, instead of elected, is now hired. Is that appointed? It's now appointed.
The tax collector?
Or is it the treasurer? It's the treasurer.
Treasurer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah.
No,
So,
Peter's right. There's definitely some sort of mathematical, because she would be a salaried position.
Right.
That is
Should be
elected.
more flat.
So that's not, her COLA raise should be
Yep.
added right in. So that.
But she has an assistant.
Right, but the assistant isn't on, this is the tax collector salary, the part-time position is above at a request for 5653, and the elected salary, if you look back, Peter's right, the 2021 budget is 32,000, that would be her salary.
Right.
And they're saying that the request is 32,000, and it should increase, it should have a COLA raise in April. So 32,000 plus the COLA raise can't be 32,000.
I think the 32,000 was just an estimate. If you take August's numbers and you prorate it, she's only going to come in at 30,000.
But she's a salaried position.
Yeah, so I think the $32,000 number for 2021 budget is just an estimate. I don't think it's actual.
but if you changed people, isn't that gonna reset the clock anyway on their salary? They're not gonna pick up where the other person left off.
It's actually, if I remember correctly, it's elected, so their salary is what the town says their salary is. Whatever we vote the salary to be, that's their salary, and if they want a raise, they have to go before the voters in order to get a raise.
See,
Other than the COLA,
other than COLA.
Right.
which would be built in.
Do all positions get COLA? Because I haven't heard of COLA.
Well, COLA would be the same thing through a CBA. As you move through the years, you'd get a raise. It's like any other
Part
position.
of the
This
CBA
position's
part
not
of
in the
CBA,
CBA.
not spelled out separately as the
Right.
COLA.
This position is an elected position, correct, not in the CBA.
Okay.
So therefore, their position is salary, and if I'm not mistaken, it's $32,000 whether she works or he works 5 days or 500 days.
So then
That's the salary.
it sounds like we're questioning whether or not that number is accurate.
Correct.
So we shouldn't take any action on this.
We
but
can
should-
hold this one,
We should hold this one and put this back to Greg
Yes.
to get back to us on that. So do we need a motion for that? Or does that,
No, we can just pass over that one. We'll
Okay.
table that one for a later time.
Good. Next one is legal, it's on page 7. So one comment that Greg Kobe told us, if you look at the request, it's $5,000 for right-to-know responses. And if you look at the actuals for 2021, that number looks like it would go way, way over $5,000 by the end of the year. We have had a lawyer help us with all these right-to-know requests, and they sent a bill to the person that was making all these requests for copying. And since he's got the bill, he has not put in any more requests. So we're expecting that we will be able to cover that year with that amount.
Doesn't that sort of put a thumb on people asking for making right-to-know requests when you go after them for making too many?
Oh, no. We weren't asking them at all to make too many. Anybody who asks for something to be copied, they pay a standard price per sheet for what they want copied.
Okay.
that's pretty standard.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it's a very
fair.
standard thing.
Because they can get it digitally, right?
They don't pay for the person that does the work, so Beth Hossack is the person that does most of the research and work. They don't get paid for her salary or any of her time. We pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the only thing they get paid for is copy, or if they request something electronic, then we would charge them for a USB drive. So it's a fairly nominal charge, and it is within the law to be able to do that.
Yeah. It's not nominal when you think of the amount of time the staff member spends
Correct.
preparing it. That's where the money is. So why such an increase in the legal expense? Did Greg, did he have any explanation for, I mean, this is
Yeah,
$20,000.
we have used a lot of legal time this year.
Yep. So we're
Had
anticipating.
3 different investigations, correct?
Right.
3 different investigations, and a lot of advice from both the town manager and for now the assistant town manager, or the acting town manager.
Yep.
Has been basically kind of having his lawyer by his hip to help him get through all this. So there's been a lot of legal time that we have consumed this year.
Do we
Is this legal
anticipate more
expense-
next year?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
I would hope not, but I don't know.
You know, that's sort of like trying to figure out how much snow we're gonna have.
I know.
you
Well,
know?
yeah, but you're talking about a 30% increase in the
I
salary
get it,
here.
but this year it was an extraordinary year.
Right. Do we have any reason to believe next year's going to be
We have,
Sam?
we have the potential of new department heads and possibly the potential of a water supervisor. So in that hiring process, that will also use lawyers. Is that correct,
That's correct.
Darrell?
So we don't have a contingency for?
No, it's actual flat expenditure, what we have used in the past. And in the past, we haven't, things have been much quieter than they were last year.
Bob?
Plus, I assume that their rates have gone up a little bit, but it's mostly their time, the time that they have actually used.
Are we talking a different lawyer than Sumner Coleman?
Yes, we are including his time, but we also have special lawyers for the police department, and we have lawyers that we use for CBAs. Is anything else you can think of, Darrell?
Yeah, I mean, it's really become a specialized situation where each lawyer has their own niche. It used to be we'd go over to Sumner and 99% of what we asked him he had, but even now he's saying that we should go to this one or that one because that's their particular, like cable TV might not be his thing, and he said, but this guy's got cable TV, you know. So it's,
And we've also used legal firms to do some of our investigations.
right.
Yes, Bob?
Wouldn't the police lawyer be in the police budget?
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily.
Not for the town.
No.
No.
Okay.
Not if it's against the town, right? Not if it involves,
Well, the CBA, the police union has their own
Yeah.
attorney, but the town would want an attorney to negotiate with the CBA with the.
right.
I
But
just
the-
wanted to make sure it wasn't in another budget that we, okay.
All right.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the legal budget for the sum of $90,000.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. You-
All right. Any more discussion?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Looking at the 2022 requested number versus the 2021 actual. Again, what's the rationale for the requested? I understand that there's perspective, legal expenses and such, but what's the logic behind the $13,000 increase?
So
You know
see if I understand what, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking, so let me just kind of reiterate it back to you and tell me if I'm correct. Are you asking the actual being 62,000 or 63,000 and it going up for the request be 85,000? Is that what you're saying? This 21 actuals. Okay, that's just up until August.
Through August.
So it's not the whole year. It's
That's what the
two-thirds of the
budget
year.
originally, yeah.
It's 8 months.
So we've spent almost the entire budget by August.
Yes.
And we're in August.
And we're in
We have
August. So the,
Expense from August.
but the net result here is that this is gonna be one of those instances where if we don't need the money, we're gonna be sitting on surplus, right?
Correct.
So I mean, our hope is we're only gonna use the legal advice when we need it.
Absolutely.
It's there when we need it. We're not gonna be using it because the line's there. Oh, let's bring in the lawyer. Let the lawyer do these things at a higher price. And if we have the surplus, this is where that whole discussion comes from, that we gotta figure out what we're gonna do with it. But we can't leave ourselves too short. And I prefer that we use lawyers that specialize, quite honestly, because they're gonna be more efficient. I would rather have, if a lawyer specializes in this particular topic, and it's only gonna take them 5 hours to do the work,
Yep.
or someone who's a general is gonna take 10 hours, because it's not something they do every day,
Yep.
I'd rather go with someone who's a specialist,
Yep.
so.
To my understanding, our previous town manager had 2 law degrees. So that may have been a reason why we didn't use as much legal advice as this is.
Okay.
Yes, Bob?
Just a quick question. Do we know if any of this lawyer expense that we're encountering this year is COVID-related?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right,
Okay.
not that I've,
Okay,
I wouldn't think so.
okay.
my understanding is that what could be deemed part of, created by COVID or expense by, has been already paid or has been funded already. So they've pretty diligent about what they were able to pay with that and who we could.
Which leads to another question that we've recently received $800,000 in
Opera
COVID
funds.
relief,
Opera funds, right.
right? And would the Budget Committee be able to be given some information sometime down the road as far as how that money can be used?
Absolutely. You can get that information from Greg Kobe. He has provided the selectmen with a number of write-ups and some articles about different types of infrastructure that other towns in New Hampshire have used the opera funds for. This is a long-term, what was the expiration? Was it 2026?
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 years.
2026, so we don't have to spend it this first year. We literally have like 4 years to be able to decide what we're going to do for it. But it basically is, it has to be an infrastructure cost, and then it has to be approved. So you got to submit it, and then the government's going to say, yes, we agree that that's a correct infrastructure cost.
Could we have that information provided to us through email? Is that possible?
That's possible. We
So
can
we
we
can,
can make
Yeah,
a
we don't
request to.
spend
yeah,
a lot
we
of time here discussing it?
Yep.
Yeah, we can.
Just please understand that won't happen right away because
Right.
we don't even know where the money's going to be allocated yet and how much we'll really get.
I think Bob's interested in where it could be spent, not where we decided it's going to be
Okay.
spent.
Yeah, how it can be spent.
Okay,
the
sure.
guidelines. Yeah.
And was that given to you guys in paper form?
It was in two different things. There was a write-up about the opera
Okay.
bill, and there was also, he sent us an article about how towns in New Hampshire had been putting in for their infrastructure.
All right, and if we could get that emailed, Charlene, if we could find out what those two articles were and have them emailed to the board members, that would be great. I don't think we need to print them and all that. I think just
Right.
emailing them for
Right.
for those that would like to read them, they'll become available through your email.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no,
Yeah, I have
I'm sorry.
one more question, which someone brought up the fact that we're at like 63,000 for this year, his budget is 65. What are we gonna do if by the end of the year, we need more than 65,000? Because we've talked about going to 85,000 as, and if we have a surplus, great. What are we gonna do if we, come under that?
That's a good
I mean,
question.
go over that.
Your bottom line budget.
You know, we got 3,000 left, as we pointed out, we got 3 or 4 months left of the year.
When you blow through the budget, the line item.
You'd have to go into the, what I call a rainy day fund.
Yeah.
The surplus,
The unexpended fund balance.
yeah.
There is a contingency fund. It's really not intended for this. It's really intended for, like, if we lose the boiler or we lose something major, unexpected. Here we are kind of expecting what this is. So the money would have to be found someplace else in the budget.
Okay.
Rest assured, the lawyers will be paid.
Good point, Darrell.
So they don't go pro bono.
Were there any other, yes, Bob?
I just wanted to bring up one other point. Our budget is a gross budget. And I guess what that means is that money can be shifted from one department to another with the approval of, I believe, the Board of Selectmen, which is done from time to time. So if legal is overspent and another department budget is
Underspent?
underspent, they can move around funds. So
Basically, we
It's
have a
easy enough
bottom
to
line
do.
budget.
Okay. Well, I'm just, like I said, I'm just trying to
Nope.
understand this $20,000 difference, that's all.
That's absolutely fine.
All right, if there's no more discussion, can we have a vote to, approved,
Aye.
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 opposed,
No. No.
and two,
No.
and abstained?
same.
Okay.
Okay. So the next one is the planning budget, and it's on pages 10 and 11. So the planning budget went up $14,487. A large portion of that is salaries. This is for the John Cashel, the planning director, who works 12 hours a week, as well as part of, I guess, the whole time of Dee Voss's time as the special projects coordinator. They also added a minute taker last year.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Yes, Bob.
Dee Voss wears a lot of hats. She's involved with all kinds of projects in town. Water, she spent a lot of time on water, and numerous projects. She's involved with, on several committees as minute taker, such as the one in trash.
And energy.
So why is her salary being taken out of the planning department?
'Cause
That doesn't seem fair.
I think it's because 90% of her time is with planning and with zoning. Those two probably consume 90% of her time. She does help out and as an admin assistant to some of the committees. Yes.
Just a couple of things. I think it's really important as a board that we utilize the position and not the person that holds it.
Yep.
Because it's really about the position that we're talking about, not the person.
Good point.
Secondly, I just want to be clear that the position of the Administrative Assistant Special Projects Coordinator, that's one position, which spends a great deal of its time in planning and special projects. And then the overtime is actually where you come into the crux of the administrative work to the energy and all those other committees, is what I understand.
Okay. Good point, thank you.
So, may I ask a question?
Yes, Phil.
So on the, just so I understand, on the top line there, the top row, about the $10,000 or $9,000 difference, is that a change in the hours being worked, a salary rate being adjusted, or a combination of both?
Yeah.
Yes,
same
salary
question.
increase, yep.
Is a salary increase? Okay. I wasn't sure if they were being asked to work more hours with the whole COVID thing loosening up.
Phil, just so that you're aware, the Administrative Assistant Special Projects, that's a full-time position.
Yeah, because, yep, it's on that.
And then the Planning Director is 12 hours a week. It's a contracted position, like.
Right.
All right, thank you.
You had a question, Bob?
Yes, Peter.
I thought that when you did a master plan update, it cost $10,000. As we can see in the updates from previous years, $7,000. If we're doing minor updates for $5,000, it doesn't seem like a minor update to me. It's like a half of a major update. $5,000, when you look at the total in previous years, that's an awful lot of money.
So in 2000,
I
if I
thought it
get
was
this correct,
$10,000 to update
2018, it
any
was,
kind of master plan.
yeah, 2018 was 7,000.
Yeah.
Yep. I do not specifically know why that, I don't have any other information about that. I know that we are meeting for that, and I know it gets printed up, but I do not know why that cost is at that amount, or what the explanation of that is.
Yes,
That
Bob.
could be an item that you could ask for.
Greg is on the planning board,
Yes.
and I confess that I don't watch all the meetings, but I watch enough to realize that I haven't heard the planning board discussing updating any master plan.
Has
Did
been
I miss
discussed.
that?
Yeah, you did. That absolutely has been discussed. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Recently?
Within the last month.
Okay. So you are planning on?
We've had so many projects that have come back to the board. We had a couple of meetings scheduled for workshops where we would discuss this and had to use them as regular planning board meetings.
Okay, so this
We got so much business.
$5,000 then is a pretty accurate,
But I don't know what that number is. So what I'm saying is that I'm starring that
Yeah, why don't we, I suggest we
Okay, well,
move on
I think
to,
we,
that
more
on, and
information
we
on
get a
it.
question,
Yeah.
get a
And,
question from
that doesn't make sense to me.
why that,
because that
what
is
is actually
minor
there.
updates, so,
Yeah.
you know, it's, seems like a large amount, like Peter was
Just, you
saying.
know, throw a number of 5,000.
All right, the next one is zoning. It's on page 12. So zoning is a $1,000 from last year.
Right, now it looks like a good portion of it was the increase just in the mailings for butters and
Yep.
a lot of your mailing, your postage went up a considerable amount from, and we're in August and we're already at over budget.
Right.
For what was allotted last year.
But there's revenues that collected so that they offset the budget.
What's that?
There's revenues collected on this that they offset the budget.
Right. I'm just saying, or we're in August already and we're tapping on the door for that one. But the other thing is to, I think that on this one here, at some point, we're gonna see that levels out some too, because there isn't much other building, you're gonna start to see less and less needs for abutters and certified mailings, I think, going out for some of the zoning.
That's what I said in 1985.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah. Yeah.
But, so can I ask a question? What are we legally required to be posting these things in the newspaper?
Absolutely. It's in the ordinances.
In fine print.
But again, there's revenues to offset that.
Yeah, no, you're right.
The developer that submits their plans, they actually end up paying for all those costs.
Gotcha, okay, all right.
But since we actually expend it, it has to be shown inside of the
Yep, that's fine.
budget. So I'll make a motion that we approve the zoning department budget of $4,550.
Do I have a
Second.
second?
I'll second.
Okay. If there's no more discussion, can I, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions? Okay.
Bob, in the past, we used to have revenues listed on the budget form. Will we be provided with that down the road, or?
For the next few months, you mean, for?
Well, usually when we got the budgets, revenues were listed for each department that was generating revenue to offset the budget.
Did you look in
that
your
is-
book yet? It's in our book. We have a whole section on revenue.
Yeah,
Did you
that's
look
in the-
Did you look in your book? This is the selectmen's version, but in your book, did you look under the revenue tab?
Yeah, but
Yes.
the projected revenues to offset this budget is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it's-
Usually, they're listed right below the budget in this area down here
Okay.
as revenues.
See, Bob, this is one thing that I could never understand. This budget really isn't that number of 4550, because there's revenue involved. We budget and we get the money back, so it's not really a budget.
It's a requirement of law.
I
And
know
did-
that,
and
but
I
I-
supported
it's
finance
hard for me to understand
for
that.
15 years in corporate America, and when I first saw this, I'm like, why are you showing this? Why aren't you just showing the net value? And so
The
Greg
net.
Colby sat me down and said, this is the way the state requires us to do budgeting. Whatever we actually spend, we have to have in the budget, even if we're getting the money back. Same thing with the expense of.
Building inspections,
The
same
expense
thing.
of the town clerk, for example, that's a big revenue source. They actually come out in the positive. The town clerk department actually pays for it, but we have to show both.
Is there like a time
Abstained.
when a developer would
Abstained.
default on a check?
Yep.
He did.
So, right, we pay the Eagle Tribune, and then the developer, the check doesn't clear, and we're out the money. I would imagine that's why, right?
Yeah. Well,
Probably have
it's
legal
a
fees.
It
type of
doesn't help,
accounting.
it doesn't help him when he's trying to get something passed.
What's the name
Right,
for it? I
yeah.
can't remember what
Yeah.
the,
Governmental accounting.
governmental accounting, there you go. Yeah.
People
So the next one
default.
is cemeteries, and it's on page 17.
Which one?
17 cemeteries, page 17. So the sexton that we have is paid weekly. The sexton shows up twice a week. And he also is the project manager for the cemetery expansion. I don't know if you're aware, but the Palmer property, we basically traded some property, and we got a piece of land behind the old cemetery, and that we're in the process of expanding. So our current sexton is now the project manager for that project, so that we will have cemetery lots for the next 20 years when that gets developed. There's also $3,000 being requested to repair the cemetery shed, which is in the back of the, I think it's Lot B. It's a big red shed. We are looking to pay for that through another source. So that money will not, even if when we approve this, it may end up being sourced from another place. Do you remember what he said, Darrell?
No.
Was it one of the funds, not a revolving
No,
fund, but
it
it
wasn't
was
a
some
revolving
type of, and it was basically for the cost of materials
Right.
to repair the shed. So it wasn't a big cost, but that's what we are estimating the cost is, and that's why it's in the budget.
And so now the maintenance for this doesn't include, we take the maintenance of the landscaping and stuff out of the highway department, correct?
The,
What pays for that? I mean, I'm pretty, aren't we?
Currently, the highway department does it.
that's funded out of the perpetual care trust fund. So all perpetual care goes into this fund, and that's where the money is consumed. So whether or not my guess is they're going to move money from that trust fund
Right.
to the highway department to offset it. You're correct. They currently are doing the cutting of the grass and so on.
Peter?
I guess that was my question, and maybe it's not appropriate, but we have money in the cemetery trust fund that we can't use for anything else except maintenance of there, or how was that working? Are we
there's-
gonna move money from that fund?
Okay, so there used to be perpetual care collected when you sold a lot. So you sold a lot.
Yeah.
And part of that was perpetual care, and that was to take care of the cutting of the grass effectively. Minor maintenance of the lots. But now that has changed, and so literally, it is all put into the cemetery trust fund and then expended by the highway department when they do the work. We move that money from the trust fund that has the perpetual care in it to pay their salaries of doing this work.
Why can't we use that money to fix the shed?
It's perpetual care, it's not a maintenance.
Doesn't,
It's, you know what it is? It's, when I talked with Jill Sanders, she's like, there's a trust fund for everything, and it really depends on how the trust fund was created, the wording that it was used. So there is a trust fund that is to be used for major expansion and projects, and on that trust fund, I think there's about $43,000, and that will be used to clear the land of all the trees, remove all the boulders and ledge, and level out the ground, and then survey the plots, and then put grass in it. So that fund is coming, or that project is being funded through that trust fund. There's another fund that has like miscellaneous maintenance costs in it, and I believe that's what Greg Colby was telling us.
That's where it's
that
coming,
There's
yeah.
another, it's a small amount of money in it. It might have been $1,000 or $1,500, and he said he would look at the balance, and if that could cover that, then that's where the money would be used to pay for that. Yeah. But we're talking about a small amount of money.
But yeah, perpetual care, when they're paying for that, that is not for the facilities on the property. It's for the grooming and the maintenance of the lands around those stones and around the loved ones, area there. So that's more,
Elected.
yeah, that's what perpetual care would cover. They're pretty specific.
What do we sell a lot for nowadays? Anybody know?
Not a lot, 425 or something like that for a resident.
It's a good time for you and I, Pete, to go get ourselves.
It's gotta be too wide. Double.
I mean, if we're alive 10 years from now, we'll be taking our nourishment through a straw.
Yeah, you might want to invest in a double wide.
I'll make a motion that we approve the cemetery department budget for $10,500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All right?
Opposed? And abstained? All right.
So the next one is on page 18. Page 18, that's insurance. And Primex is the only game in town. That's kind of what Christine was saying. It's a kind of a fixed cost that we can't change. They pay for, or they take care of all the liability for the town through that policy.
Is this a guaranteed maximum, or is that already set?
That's what we've estimated the bill will be for next year.
They're the only game in town.
No, you're right, they are.
But why is that?
They specialize in one thing. They
Municipalities.
specialize in municipality liability.
They're the only
I have a
ones in the
suggestion.
state that
Nobody
do
else
this?
wants to talk to us.
Yeah, it's the same in the schools.
Right.
Everybody is Primex.
Can we wait on this until we get a real firm number?
Yes, that's what
Bob,
I'm
so
going to say.
what are we going to,
Basically, what Pete was saying, in the past, we've waited till November to approve this budget because the actual bill will be coming in sometime in November.
Right.
So
So we want to hold off on this one?
rather than going back and reapproving it, the new figure.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
all right? Greg, what's
So the
the,
next one is advertising and regional associations, and it's page 19. So I want to bring out one comment, and that is on the third item, dues. Part of that is for the Rockingham Planning Commission. It was in the budget last year, but the selectmen decided not to pay the dues last year and to just wait 1 year because we were in such a very tight budget. We were looking for ways to be able to not spend money. So we basically did not pay the dues and were not part of the Rockingham Planning Commission last year. It again is in this year, and we are looking forward to joining back again to the Rockingham Planning Commission. We get a lot of benefits from them. It was more not the value of that dues, it was more we were in a tight place in terms of the budget. So we were looking for anything that we could do to save some money. So this is the flat budget. Last year was $25,500, and it is again this year.
Greg, could you give us some idea of what we get out of that?
If you ever go on your to the website, the town website, and go to the viewer, and you get to see all the properties, all the tax plans, all the tax parcels. All that software is done through the RPC, the Rockingham Planning Commission. They also do a lot of planning for regional issues. So one of the things that is being worked on is the traffic calming project for Main Street, and they are involved with that as well. There's also, they have meetings where there is education for the selectmen to attend, to be able to learn about other ways of doing development within your local town. Like, for example, the 2 years ago when I went, they talked a lot about how Portsmouth was handling small houses. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're very, very small houses, and allowing development to happen that would not have happened because the prices of houses are so expensive in some of our towns. So,
One thing I think is really important to note, that even though we didn't pay last year, they still would answer the phone, and they still helped us out, knowing that and hoping that this year we'd be able to rejoin again.
Weren't they also looking into or working with us to come up with a plan for synchronization of the traffic lights
Yes.
on 125?
Yes.
Which I think that was another big thing. That was getting ready to come through this year, and we didn't get that didn't go through. We didn't sign up for this year.
yep.
So that didn't happen, which was a major issue, which is a benefit to the town, to be able to keep the flow of traffic through town and make people less apt to drive to the center of town to save time if the flow starts to move smoother. So they have been involved in a lot of projects, or helping us with some of the major projects we have.
That being a state road, that was actually a state project. So I don't know that it hasn't continued. I know it hasn't been, no changes have been made, but I think the committee and the study is still being done.
Is it?
Yep. For the traffic coming through town, that is also another state road, but it's
Right.
coming right through the middle of town, and that's why we were asked to be involved.
Right.
Yep.
The question?
Sure.
Yes.
Question and a comment. Question is, does anybody know how many town reports we printed up last year? Anybody know the number?
Yes, Mrs. Voss would know the exact number.
Okay. The reason why I bring it up is that several years ago, we decided that we could reduce the number, or recommend reducing the number of town reports, because after a meeting, we went down in the basement and found, I forget the number, but it was a significant number of cases of town reports down there. So what I'm going to recommend is that we
We did reduce it last year. Peter, do you remember what the number was? I remember talking about it and
Remember
cutting
2
the
years
number
ago.
down. I actually remember cutting the number
We did it from
down.
like 800 to 400 or something.
Yeah, it was, we drastically reduced it because we
Right.
didn't believe that they were being picked up and actually taken. And then we tried to make sure that they were given out at the elections. So
Yeah.
I think we actually consumed a number of boxes of
Right.
books.
Well, once we get to this time of year,
Yep,
whatever we have left over is really a waste.
correct.
So if somebody taking a trip downstairs to just check that number and make sure it isn't out of control again
Yep.
would be a good idea.
Yep.
We spent a lot of money on that, Jesus.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Advertising and Regional Association's budget for $25,000 and $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Phil? Any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And abstained?
Abstain?
Okay.
So this was level funded.
Yes.
Yes.
It is level funded. The next is page 21, it's conflict of interest. Flat, but, a level funded budget.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained? Okay. Excuse me.
So the next one is street lighting. It's 31 or 32? It's
Street lighting, you said?
32. Page 32.
32. Thank you.
One thing that we are noticing is from our LED lights, I believe the deal is 5 years. So after 5 years, we will own all of those fixtures. And then we'll see a sizable reduction in our street lighting. And that was a major energy-saving project to switch them from halogen to LED lights.
2020.
Question?
Yes.
The $55,000 there for
Yep.
actual, that was our actual electric bill.
That's through August.
No, it's not just the electric bill. It's also, we are actually paying a portion of the cost of those,
Lights.
those lights. In
That
other words,
would-
these
That
are,
would be the difference between the 105,000 and the 55,000. So in other words, 55,000,
is
50,000 is going
55,000
towards-
is the energy up to August. So that'll be a higher amount.
okay, got it,
Plus,
got it,
you're
got
right,
it.
So it's 100.
plus the cost to cover paying for the actual lights.
got it.
So we're renting, basically renting to own the
For
street.
5 years,
Correct.
exactly.
And this will be we're in year 1, right? We're just about going into year 2.
We're going into year 2, correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
No more questions?
Make a motion that we approve the street lighting department budget for $105,000.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained?
So the next one is the solid waste collection. It's on page 33. And we had two vendors that responded to our RFP. One was JRM and the other one was Capella.
Casella,
What's that?
Casella,
Capella.
Capella?
Yeah, Capella.
Like Casella.
Capella is what they use in Atkinson, I believe.
That's Casella.
Yep. And what Greg told us was that taking those two,
Casella, right?
Yeah, it is Casella.
Casella, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it wrong. You were right, Casella. I'm sorry. Yeah,
I
I got
believe you.
P in there. P, I don't know how I got a P in there. Casella, correct. So what Greg did was took the two one-year, first-year amounts, and to cover that budget. So the RFP is in the process of being approved. Am I
That's
correct,
correct.
Darrell? And secondly, instead of spending $300,000 on the two barrels, we are leasing them for lease and own. So I think it's 5 years. I think it's 5 years. It's like $7,000 per month. So that's what that $84,000 is. And then at the end of the fifth year, we own the barrels. The barrels will last a good 25 years, is what we were told by all the vendors last year.
Seeing's believing on that one. After you beat up a barrel for 5 years, we'll see how it looks.
Gonna give us back.
We gonna be using these barrels this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Well, actually, not this year, but next year.
We'll have the barrels
But
by December.
JRM is not gonna have the cart.
They're gonna drop all, well, actually, they have a modified automated cart. Basically, they take the cart, they bring it to the back of the truck on a hook,
yeah.
and the thing dumps the barrel.
Okay.
So has manual intervention, but we went on the cost of the contract. So
And we're going to be limited to 196 gallon a week?
one for trash and one for recycle. Yep,
Is this per household?
per household, yes.
Just want to make sure I understood that.
Yep.
Are they still planning on, with this solid waste, I see that, this has gone up.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, because the tipping fees have gone up, I know that and stuff too, but,
And I believe the other towns pay into this,
Yes.
so we will actually have an overall cost of $35,000, but it'll be, part of it will be picked up by costs from the communities that will be participating in it. I'm not sure which ones they are.
okay.
They sent a flyer just last week, I think it was, and I didn't get a chance to take a look at who the communities were.
So the 35,000 is our share or the
No, it's our
total?
total cost.
So this is another one of those somewhat offset by revenue situations.
Yep.
So on the sanitation and the recycling, we're looking at how much is going to be produced, what our costs for disposing of this will be, and we're looking at the 875,000.
Yep.
But that can change.
It could change if we have more recycle. So
Well-
basically, the more recycle we have, the lower the cost could be.
But also that can go either way. I mean, we can have people continue to recycle the way they are now.
Correct.
And instead of it being able to be recycled, it's now become contaminated.
Exactly.
And our tipping fee is now doubled because they now have to handle that differently again. So I think that was our big concern was, when we were looking into recycling, everybody was crying to keep the recycling, but at the rate we're going now, this fee, I'm assuming this fee is going to be higher unless education has been done to teach people how to recycle properly. Because the tipping fees went up last year. I mean, I saw the contract, I saw what we spent.
Yep.
And what we budgeted and what we're spending is a big difference. Because when they go through the recycling barrels, they're not able to recycle that barrel, and so it goes into the trash.
So this is what's going to happen. A couple of things that when we looked at the two contracts, Casella had a 10% contamination rate. So if you had 10% of your recycling was contaminated, they would throw it into the garbage, and we would pay extra tipping fee for that. Because JRM had 35% contamination.
Right.
Which means, that's a good thing, because more of our recycle will actually end up in recycle.
Right.
The new track committee is planning, Isabel, is it Goodrow? Isabel Goodrow is the chair for that.
Yeah.
And they are planning a whole series of education to our residents.
Okay.
There will also be tags, little booklets that will be connected to the barrels. So when they deliver the barrels to people's house, there'll be a whole thing on recycling rules and regulations. Another thing that will help is that if people do not put in correct recycling, they'll leave the barrel at your door, at your
I was going to ask that.
curbside.
Here we go. That's
That's
good.
it.
With a note. And it'll have the note will say why we did not pick up the barrel.
There's the real
Something
incentive.
else.
That is the
That's-
real incentive, you're
Well, that's
right.
exactly right, and that's where, we didn't have that in the past. With our services now, we don't have that until they get into
What are
it.
we gonna do with apartment complexes and other things like, condos and?
Apartment complexes will still be using the
Dumpsters.
dumpsters, and that process will stay the same.
And we'll be paying for the dumpsters, or they will be?
I don't, it depends on whether it is there are some places where we pay for the dumpster and other ones where the owner of the complex pays for it. I think has to do with condos. If it's condos, we pay for it, and if it's apartment buildings, they pay for it. But I'm not absolutely positive, but it's something like that, Peter.
No? Are we gonna make it mandatory for apartment complexes to recycle?
No, I don't know.
Because it's a tipping fee that we're gonna pay if
Yep.
they don't
Yep.
recycle.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and that goes the other way too, also on homeowners. I mean,
Yeah.
somebody doesn't want to take the time to recycle, what are you going to do? They're not going to sort that, I mean, they're going to throw that right in the trash with, you know.
Okay.
And
You
so,
go-
guess that's a-
You get one barrel, so
One
if
barrel.
you want a second barrel, you gotta recycle. That's basically what it boils down to.
And these are big barrels. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not small barrels, so.
Yeah.
oh, yeah, no,
The
for
normal
most-
barrels are
for
40
most-
gallons.
yeah. For most homeowners, that one barrel is more than their two barrels put together. The 96-gallon barrel, that's a good-sized tipping barrel.
The Thompson
And-
family,
and
they
the-
got too many kids.
And they're not requiring you to put the lid down on it.
I mean,
either,
this,
so,
these things are about the size of a small hot tub.
yeah. No, really, and it's funny because if you've driven by some of the barrels, they're strategically stacked. So if it doesn't fall on the ground, it stays, you know what I mean? So if you're filling if you're filling one of those barrels, you got a lot of waste.
We still will have the once a week major item, like a
Mattress or.
mattress or air conditioner or something like that. So that got retained from the last contract through JRM. It
Yeah.
would have cost us extra if we had gone through the other vendor.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
If a homeowner just chooses to still use an existing barrel, will they take that? Because I'm thinking in terms like maybe there's some people who physically can't wheel something that big
They
out to the
will.
curb.
They'll take the existing.
No, because
They will not take the existing.
Oh, I thought they said that they
No,
would take
They
them.
will not take
But what do when you have someone who's physically infirm and can't move this thing out there?
Have you ever used one of these barrels? Have you ever used one of these barrels? These barrels have large wheels on them.
Yeah, and I'm
with a
also
handle.
50 years old.
It actually is a fairly easy barrel to maneuver.
I understand what you're saying,
I'm
though.
talking about
You get
my
that-
neighbors,
Yep.
this big and 85 years old, and, in the wintertime, the snow and the slush, and
Yeah.
I'm just thinking practicality for some of the citizens that we have. Has that been a consideration?
But unfortunately, what happens is, it's now with the equipment that they use to dump these barrels, that changes the whole dynamic. Now it takes two people.
Oh, I understand that.
And I know what you're saying too, but some of these, I mean, I happen to have some of these barrels, and they'll go over even with a little bit of snow on the driveway. It's easier to drag these push these down the driveway than
But
it is.
again, look at your physical size. I'm talking
know, I
about
see.
people who are,
My size.
Point of order. Are we going to approve this budget, or are we going to table it for next time? The solid waste? Are we going
No, we're
to,
going to,
are we going to approve it?
yeah, there's no questions.
Okay, so we need to make a motion then?
Sure.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the solid waste collection, $994,228.
Second the motion.
All right, if there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, abstained. Okay, yes, Bob.
The contract that we're signing with JRM, length of time, is this a
5 years.
5-year contract again?
Yep. Next is page 34, solid waste disposal and landfill. And this is a reduction of $2,000 from the previous year.
All right, I see that we went down on, so the engineering has been done on this, am I
Correct.
correct? Everything,
Yep.
so that's a big part of why it went down.
Yep.
We're already past all that.
The cap is on, they're
Right.
seeding it as we speak, and
Okay. All right,
I'll make a motion to approve the solid waste disposal /
Second.
landfill budget for $44,500.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right, All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained? Right, that's been approved.
Next one is health, it's on page 35. And this has gone up 1.65%, or $1,458.
Which is fabulous for health insurance.
No, there's no, well, there's no health insurance. here.
This is the health department.
Health
It's
Department.
the, yeah,
Right, and I think,
really just salary increase.
yeah, salary is the biggest increase from the past, which is nothing that we can't, it's out of our control.
Make a motion to accept the health budget.
I'm sorry?
Make a motion to accept the health budget.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Yeah.
Right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right.
Next one is human services, and that's on page 36 and 37. This is a reduction of $816 from last year. So the way these centers get put onto this budget is there is a warrant article that goes for approval by the taxpayers, and once they have approved it, they become part of this budget. So the way that there'll be, very likely will be a warrant article for, what's it called, SOFRO?
So-Rock.
So-Rocks, yeah. They have finally provided all the information needed and the number of Plaistow citizens that they have assisted. So all that information went to Human Services, and so we are now ready to give a warrant article back to the town, and then if they approve it, that will appear in next year's budget.
Yes.
I just have a question. So once that you're on the Human Services budget, you stay on the budget permanently?
Unless you are no longer servicing Plaistow residents.
So how are we record keeping the accounting of how many
Typically what
people
happens.
in
Go ahead.
Plaistow they serve?
They have an actual report that they submit to Human
And how
Services.
how does Human Services adjust the amount given?
The actual mechanics, I don't know. You'd have to ask Lori
Okay.
Sadowitz. But one thing that, if there is someone who is not, and maybe in the future, they leave them on at $1. So
Okay.
you see like the Crisis Pregnancy Center and the Lamprey Health have been reduced down to $1. If there's definitely, they moved out of town or whatever, then they're just taken off the budget altogether.
Okay.
If there are no more questions.
Make a motion, we approve the Human Services Department budget for $41,133.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I abstain.
Okay.
So the next department is the Welfare Department. It's on page 38. Welfare budget has an increase of $8,262.
Bless you.
So,
I see we went up 7,500 just on miscellaneous assistance. Do we know what's unforeseen assistance for residents in need determined by an event, So are we expecting insurgent, a surge in some kind of a
Yes.
national disaster? Or what are we looking at that
this
we've
is-
now gone from 450 up to 7,500?
This is a case that we feel as though that a lot of the subsidies drying up quickly from Washington.
Okay,
And the need doesn't go away, but the money that was being subsidized goes away. So I think that's probably a big key to what you're seeing there.
The welfare budget is kind of unique in the fact that when somebody comes up to the town to ask for welfare, we are required by law to fund them.
That's right.
If we can find out where they're from, we can then counter the expense to that town. We have to provide them whether we have money in the budget or not. And so that's why this is really important, that they do an estimate of what they're expecting in terms of people who are going to be in need. And I think what the comments that Darrell just made were very concise, is the fact that we have a lot of people who are out of work and on subsidy and on unemployment, and now basically are trying to get back on their feet.
Can we have an example of what an unforeseen assistance might be? I mean, there's a lot of line items here. What in
Yeah,
addition to that?
it could be a lot of different things. It could be food, it could be residence,
Oh, we have a food.
housing.
so you're saying that we can move, so they would move like, because you have $50 down for food and markets.
Yep.
Shelter, we pretty much broke it down quite a bit. Shelter, should we need to help assist somebody to get a place? We've gone down in the heat, which I'm foreseeing that may go up this year.
Yep.
But we went down, we're asking for less. But that's why miscellaneous, are we looking at this being to offset, should we expend more than 1,500 in fuel? Possibly take it out of this miscellaneous assistance? Or what are we doing? I mean, that's why I'm asking, is this account sort of fluid that can be moved around to other areas should the need arise? Or, because miscellaneous assistance, that's pretty broad.
Maybe we could table it
Yeah,
and
let's
ask the
table it. We
welfare.
can ask
absolutely.
Laurie to give us
I'm
more
on that.
detail for that item.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree.
Tiny Massachusetts, yeah.
The next one is on page 41. It is the patriotic purpose and cultural. This has primarily to do with two things: Old Home Day, as well as funding for our town celebrations on Veterans Day, Memorial Day, and 9/11 remembrance. The Old Home Day budget used to be $22,500. The Old Home Day Committee were requesting donations, and I think what did they come up with, 7,000 this year?
Somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000.
Okay. So this 15,000 plus those additional donations they've already collected, we'll get them through the year. We're hoping that will also be a long-term thing, that they'll be subsidized by the town and also request donations in the future.
Just a question.
Sure. Yep.
The issue that, at least the way I followed it, was a question of not being able to get insurance, to be able to do it off-site, and because it was being held in the,
Right, because it wasn't considered a town-sponsored event.
okay,
So when we sponsored it on the town green,
right.
our insurance was covering it. So because they wanted to do it anyways, they were going to try to do it at Park, and they would have had to pay for the insurance for that day to do it. We actually checked with Primex.
Okay.
Are there any more
So
questions?
so if I'm hearing you right, the logic is lower the number with the hope that the volunteers will be able to fundraise.
Well, we already
Well, they've
fundraised
already
7,000.
fundraised, yeah.
So it's going to cost us 22 to do Old Home Day, they're estimating. 7 has already been collected, so the remainder would be the 15 to be able to fund it
for next year.
Right.
So it
then-
doesn't have to be that that's, we could well, okay.
Are you
I
suggesting
get nervous
putting,
about, I get nervous about volunteers being asked to raise funds for a big event like that. If they don't have the volunteers or the capacity to do it,
Well, that was because it was cut altogether.
Right.
And that there were people that wanted it. So the only way it was going to happen was if a group of people got together and went out and solicited funding for it.
Yeah.
But if it's town-funded, like it had been in the past, it will be covered, the 22,000 will be there in which for them to work with.
Yep.
And we won't have volunteers going out soliciting the funds, as far as my understanding is. And we still have volunteers to work it, but.
We
again-
still hope that they will.
Right, well, exactly, but we're not banking on that.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's fair. I just, if we have a limited number of volunteers and they're trying to plan the event and do the fundraising, it could make people not want to volunteer because they say that's a lot of work. I don't
Well,
wanna
it's already,
do
that was, again.
But if it's already been done, yeah, I get that. Okay.
Yep. Any other? Yes.
so we could raise the amount. We could raise it to 22,000. They have the choice of either, I think what they asked, the people that donated, they would either give the money back or ask them if they would want to carry it on. We haven't got a financial report from Haley Bush, who's the chair, in terms of what they currently have. What we had thought they had raised was around $6,000.
Well, the money that's been raised is incumbent in the town now. Haley hasn't got anything to do with it.
Well, I'm saying, so the donations have actually been gone through the town finances?
Yes. and-
Oh, okay, I
and
wasn't
it'd be
aware of that.
Incumbent for Old Home Day.
Okay. Okay, so the original, that $6,000 or $7,000 has already been included?
Yeah,
Okay,
which was essentially to cover fireworks.
yep.
Right,
Right.
right. Yes, Bob.
I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting and when they were discussing this, when you fellows were discussing this, and I understood it not to be encumbered, but a special account had been set up.
That's a better way to say it, yes, yeah,
Okay, so there's money in an account,
A trust fund,
right?
Right.
To offset this,
Old Home Day Trust Fund, yep.
already in the account.
But, yeah. But it is weird, like, all the other parts of the budget, we budget the whole amount. And then if it's offset by revenue, it's offset by revenue, and we're not doing that here.
This is not revenue. It's not revenue per se.
Because it's what we already
It's
have.
donations. It's
Yeah.
donations. The way the trust fund was written was that it will allow only two items, donations or profit from the program book that they do every year. So those are the only two sources
Yeah.
that
So,
will fund
but-
that. And its purpose was to pay for the expenses of Old Home Day.
Right. But a year from now, we're gonna have to decide what we wanna do.
Yep.
If Old Home Day costs 22,000, because the budget will only be 15,600 from the previous year.
They can request more money next
They
year.
can,
Right.
and that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, next year's budget, you'll probably
This
See
is,
an
probably
increase.
be receiving a bill. or
that's
they'll be
the
asking.
incentive, though, to try to show that, you did collect $6,000 or $7,000. Try to do it again, and see what happens.
Okay.
They were successful in doing that. So my guess is with some effort, again, they'll do it again,
I'll make a motion that we pass the Patriotic and Cultural Department budget for $15,600.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
And the last one that we looked at was the debt service. It's on page 43.
That's probably a fixed number, right? No control over that.
We have no control of that. That's right.
So that should be an easy one.
So just to put it on the floor, I'll make a motion to approve the debt service department budget for $502,895.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. All right.
Good work.
All right, so we've knocked down a lot of the smaller ones. As a committee, we still have, we have several big ones still on here. So I guess the next question would be, what would you like to see happen for our next meeting? Because you're looking at a lot of, if you want to do some of the smaller ones, we couldn't address the planning, the insurance, and the welfare. We can get those cleaned up at our next meeting. So we would need to ask Lori to explain, or Greg could probably explain these for us. So, yeah, unless there were some other questions. So I would suggest, why don't we look at next week, we would do the planning, insurance, and welfare. And then from there, we can also see where the selectmen have gone, how many more you've approved, which will then give us an idea where we can go on the others, and go from the, yes.
We add the tax collector's budget as well. That's missing the COLA, or
Question
so
on
we
that one,
think.
too.
Yes.
Yeah, we had a
Oh,
question.
that's right, I'm sorry, yes. So we can add them, because Greg should be able to clear up most of these anyway, to our satisfaction. If not, we can always request somebody. Yes.
So I just want to make known there is 2 documents that were given to us from Greg Kobe. One is from the Plaistow Fire Department, and it's all the explanations of their line items for the 2022 budget. So that was very helpful. And then there was also one for the police department. It's got a little bit less detail, but it does have a more itemized listing of what some of the line items referred to. So I have asked Greg Kobe to forward copies of these 2 documents to you, and if you can get them out to the budget committee when you decide to do these 2 budgets that have those explanations, hopefully would help.
All right, so Charlene, is there a way to make sure that we, or once get those copies, put in our folder for next week? Yeah, just, okay. And that'll help us there.
I would ask also if it's the pleasure of this board anyways, I'd ask if it's the pleasure of this board for next week's meeting. Greg comes to our Monday night meetings. If he could call in for this meeting for any questions.
He will, yeah.
Okay.
We discussed,
Okay.
this week he was not going to, because
Right.
we were going to be doing most of the ones that they had gone over. And
Right.
And that way, we would then have, if we had questions, at least we knew, because it wasn't going to really be fruitful for him to sit here and go through all of these 11 ones. So
Right.
it kind of gave him something to work with next week, and we can,
Perfect.
yes.
Will we be asking Greg to speak to the unallocated fund, just an overview about
Right.
how we arrive at that number that was
Yes, yeah.
statutorily, not necessarily statutorily directed, but so,
Yes, yeah, we can absolutely ask. That's, because when Greg is here, yeah, we're open to ask him any of the questions we have. So anything the board has that they want to discuss with him on next Tuesday, we're more than, we're open for that. All right, let's go, let me see what else we have here. So, all right, so then is there any other things? We've covered quite a bit tonight. It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, Bob.
Yes.
I got a couple of questions. Last year, we used to send in to you questions to be asked and answered on our next meeting so that you would give somebody a heads up on what we're going to be asked.
Yep.
When do you want those questions submitted?
We can have them, we could submit them at any time. If you have questions, each week,
Yeah.
we can put them together, and then I can get them, we can get them submitted to Greg.
Yeah.
And we can get the answers following.
Like, would you like them by Thursday, or?
Well, yeah, because, well, I want to give him, yeah, I'd like it by Thursday, but I'm not looking for answers. Don't expect to get answers from him for the following Tuesday, okay?
Right.
I'd like to push him, I'd like to give him a week and a half or whatever. I'd like to have the deadline be Thursday, but not expect him, give him 4 days.
Okay.
Including his weekend.
That's fair.
To try to answer it.
He might be able to,
He
depending
may.
on the question.
Oh, that's, yeah, I'm not gonna push it, but like I said, I would like to not go in with the expectation that we're gonna have him spend his weekend and stuff trying, you've got Friday, which we're closed here. The town hall's closed on Fridays now. And then, you got Monday. So really, you're not giving him a whole lot of time.
Fine.
As far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's fair to ask of something like that. So, the sooner you get it in, Thursday would have to be the deadline, because he's not gonna see it till Monday, really.
Sure.
Because they're closed on Friday, so,
Okay, second thing.
yes.
One of the things that Bob mentioned is the financial report on how we're doing. It has, in the past, been late coming out. I would like to request that we get the financial report, monthly financial reports, in a timely manner this year for the next couple of months, so that we can at least take a look at them, rather than waiting a whole month or two before we get the report.
When do you guys get them? When's the selectmen get them?
Normally at the next business meeting that we have is when they normally show up, and they're in our folder. I don't see why, when we get them, you couldn't also be required, just
Right,
make a
well,
request to Greg for
That's
that.
all, yeah. Then, Charlene, can we request that when they put them in the folder for the selectmen,
He's way ahead of you.
not just another beautiful face, Charlene. We had you for something.
Gee, Charlene, we're going to be willing to pay you now.
Yeah, we may even throw some money
Lights
into
just
it,
came out for that.
so.
As it is, I'm not willing to work for free.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. All right, so we've gone over that part. Is there any other questions or anything the board members would like to discuss before we adjourn? Yes.
Are we going to have department heads come in and present their budgets, the bigger ones? Can we kind of map that out? At least one for next week and then one for the following week?
Well,
Is that possible?
that would be fine if we got to the section that, I'd rather not have a department head come in until, if we're gonna get to to that budget, if we decide we're gonna need them, then we would schedule that, we would then table that budget for that week and then get the notice in. Yeah, that is, that's more than, but I'm not gonna just arbitrarily for each budget bring their,
Okay.
department head in. Any other questions or anything before we adjourn? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor? All right. Close this meeting at 9:03. Thank you, everyone.